first question is, for this audience, how would you sort of define in a few sentences resident-led regeneration in your words? Because you're all coming from different sort of places on that spectrum and from different places in your profession. So maybe we'll just go down the line and.
Yeah, so I'll start with a slightly different take. So my day job is so my day job is running community services, and I think resident-led regeneration is really around that residents participating in the delivery of those services. So it's kind of it's that participation in the process the whole time.
Okay, so I look after corporate governance. So for me, it's all about decision making, and I think that resident-led regeneration is about putting residents at the centre of decision making, and not just at the top of the organisation, like you would see at our board, but throughout all levels of the decision making process.
Hello. Yeah, it's a great question. Thank you, and thanks. Yeah, for inviting us today. Yeah, I think for me, in terms of definition, it's about, you've seen this through presentation that Tanya just given, it's about having the structures and the mechanisms and the culture that enable the community to shape the changes in their neighbourhoods and that impact on their lives. And that sounds great, that's a good definition, but kind of what underpins that? And we keep hearing the word trust, but it's about building those trusting relationships within the community. And you're working with communities where trust is often broken. There could be kind of lifetime experience of being let down by different service providers. So building that trust is so key, and having people who can build those relationships and develop that. This is a bit of a Saul Alinsky quote, but it's about starting where the community's at. So take it from you here. It's no point talking about regeneration, redevelopment, and everything if you can't fix the plumbing. If there aren't safe parks for your children to play in, people won't listen. They're not interested. You have to deal with those. You have to deal with those issues first, and recognise the fantastic assets that are already there. So yesterday we went to Steplow and we went into this community centre, and you could just tell it worked. Community were using it, they were really engaged, and those people will be able to tell you what the issues are. You need to understand what those heart and mind issues are. So every time we start a regeneration project, we do a door knock, we go out and we ask people 2 questions. What do you like about living here? What changes would you like to see? From that, we then have a long conversation, and we get a really good understanding of what the key issues are for the community. And I'm sorry, it's a really long definition, but then the last bit is kind of like, you've got to be reliable. So you're going to say you can do something, you've got to do it. Because like I say, you're working with people who've been let down many, many times before. If you can't do it, say you can't do it. People are fine if you say you can't do it. Don't promise things you can't deliver on, and don't overpromise.
Great, Emmanuel.
Yeah, thank you for having me. I work primarily with young people, so I guess from the young people's perspective, it's about ensuring that young people also feel part of a community, because after all, they are part of a community. And I guess traditionally in certain areas, and pretty much over London, especially myself growing up in London, there were times when I thought my views weren't listened to. And even though we may believe at a young age that we do have solutions, there wasn't that access that young people had, and there wasn't that opportunity to really speak to people that have, I guess, the decision-making power as well. So I guess for me and for young people, it's about them being part of the process of redefining their community, and also being involved in reviewing it and changing things that are not working, and being part of everything as well. And this is where I come in, and I feel personally passionate about that. And I know like the organisations really take it well, but you know, when you're working with other organisations and authorities, because it's not the norm, it's somehow challenging. But you know, it has you know, spurred some like innovative projects and programs and activities, and I would say it's all about young people also having that power and seen as residents too, because after all they are, and also a source of knowledge. So that would be my definition, even though it's a very long one too. Thank you.
I forgot what the question was. I think just to add to that, it's, you know, my background in youth community work, but one of the key words have been trust, relationships, understanding, and having belief in each other. But sometimes that work needs to also take place within the community. The whole thing of intergenerational kind of build-up. There's always going to be issues within the communities, but having the heart and the strength to actually work with people that overcome those things, then they can work together.
I'll keep mine very brief. I think I would just build on what Vincent said in respect of, don't assume you know what your community wants and needs. You actually have to go into that community, you have to listen to what the issues are, and therefore how that infrastructure and that regeneration can almost design out those problems and actually really support the community to thrive. I'll keep that.
Great. So Tanya, you're vice chair of the board. And so maybe I'll direct my first question to you, which is, what are some of the ways that community-led regeneration has made the community stronger?
I'm here.
Okay. Yeah.
Oh God, there's probably too many ways to count it, in all honesty. I've had the privilege of being part of Poplar HARCA for 10 years, so I've seen what the transformational effects of the regeneration are. I myself have moved into a newly regenerated estate, so I wasn't there from the original construction of that regeneration, but I am now benefiting from that regeneration, and it's completely changed the shape and the way that the community uses those spaces. You know, you tend to have lots of kind of high-rise blocks and flats and things like that, and communal areas don't feel safe. They feel quite exclusionary, like you don't feel included in those spaces. You wouldn't necessarily trust to have your children out and into that certain times of day and night and things like that. And just the whole way that the estate has been regenerated and reshaped with the residents' views and with the residents' input, it has completely changed the way the residents use that space and the quality of life of those residents. You know, everybody's out on the street, everyone's communing now, there's a greater community spirit. And so I think, yeah, just in very real terms, I can just see the quality of life improvement that it's given a lot of residents.
Great. And do you think that's about, I mean, obviously probably a little bit of both, but do you think that's mostly about the sort of agency in the design, or is it about the management as well?
I think it's both. I think residents feel really invested in those spaces because they have been part of the decision-making process to create them. And so therefore the residents are looking out for one another more. They're taking care of those spaces. They feel ownership over those spaces. And to them, that gives them much greater value within that community in terms of looking after those spaces and kind of feeling more part of a cohesive community. I think it's been really fantastic.
Great. So Emmanuel, in that vein, you work a lot with the youth, and I'm wondering what are some of the ways you set the youth up for success in these processes? We just at NYU had a program for NYCHA scholars, high school students living in NYCHA housing, and we were teaching them about development and real estate and how agencies operate, and there was this kind of revelation about their role and how they could have a role in these things. And I'm wondering how you approach that.
Yeah, I would say, I think one thing about Poplar HARCA, it was pretty much having the residents involved was kind of underpinning most of the work from the beginning, I would say. In terms of, I think there's so many examples I could give, but I think one example that will really strike out is how the Spotlight building, so Spotlight is the youth service branch of Poplar HARCA, and how the building came about was pretty much impressive, because from the consultation to even the co-design with architects. I can imagine an architect working with young people pretty much saying, no, we don't want this, we want that, and how annoyed and frustrated he may be. But presently, and this was literally back in 2014, but presently, we have a purposely built youth service building equipped with music studios, theatre spaces, dance spaces. We even have a GP health service within the youth centre as well. And it's, I would say, pioneering a new way of working with young people that is really capturing the attention in pretty much London-wide. People are really intrigued, but I would say if young people weren't involved in the beginning and constantly giving their input and their ideas and recommendations on how the service can move forward, I think the youth service would have been just like a typical youth service that is around in London. We are pioneering one of the best youth services in pretty much London-wide. Yeah, we work with a lot of partners in the industry, whether it's the music industry, whether it's working in the health sector with authorities, with theatre groups, you know, so that they bring the best or the real advice of real industry and real careers to young people, because that's what they ask for. And, you know, Poplar HARCA has done a great job of listening to them and actually coming up with a very, very good service that I'm proud of being part of this. The main reason why I wanted to be part of it is so because it works with my values, and I just feel myself just literally just blending in helping young people just voice their opinions.
So you're bragging, but it's also the truth.
It is the truth. Those that have had the opportunity to come and see this building, they can vouch for me.
Yeah.
You know, it is a very good building.
That's great.
Yeah.
So Fenton, there are a multitude of, generations in these housing developments. How do you sort of make sure that the diversity of resident voices are included, especially in the early sort of design and planning phases?
Yeah, no, definitely. Okay, so as I said, we start off and we do what's called a listening campaign. So we go out to every single home in that community and we knock on the door until people answer. So sometimes we have to go back 5 or 6 or 7, and we work 7 days a week, 24 hours a day really, until we've spoken to everybody, until we've understood what their priorities are, and we start to introduce what the opportunities are. And then we develop what we call a steering group, so like a tenants association, but we have quite a lot of members on it. We have the example that the Boo gave, we have 100 members of that steering group, we call it. And then we meet and we run most sessions as participatory workshops. So breaking down the tables, lots of really creative, fun kind of participatory exercises. So everybody gets to say, everybody gets an opportunity. But any groups that we aren't engaging with, we do more outreach. We visit, we go to schools, we work with young people, we work with old people, cultures. We just don't leave it as a stone unturned. And the steering group oversee that. So we're saying to the steering group, this is a consultation week, we've got planned next, these are the groups we're going to speak to, is there anybody missing, is there anything we haven't captured here? So we're reviewing that, we're evaluating that continuously, so it's a continuous process. There's more to say, but
Sure. So Aisha, I know it's very different in the UK, but could you talk a little bit about how you sort of residents can engage at different levels of government and sort of how that interaction works?
Yeah, so Poplar HARCA is kind of uniquely placed compared to some other housing associations. You would have seen on that map, we're in one kind of geographical location, which means that we tend to just work with one borough rather than the borough of Tower Hamlets. And yeah, that's an interesting relationship, a very political relationship that requires a lot of relationship building, a lot of negotiating, things out in the open, some some discussions that maybe are a bit more behind the scenes. And I think that when it comes to residents engaging with these different kind of government organisations, it depends on whether that government organisation recognises the influence and power of the residents. And when it comes to the borough of Town Hamlets, they do recognise that the residents of Town Hamlets are very forceful. If they have an issue such as parking that they are interested in, it can really push the council to act in a particular way. So that can work in our favour. They recognise that we are a resident-led organisation, and that the things that we are trying to do are to the benefit of the residents and with the residents' involvement. So they can look quite positively and respond to residents and residents protesting, that kind of thing. They recognise that kind of power. I would say other organisations might not necessarily have direct relationships with the residents. We have the Greater London Authority, they provide funding, so they might not necessarily engage with the residents directly, but funding conditions require that we ballot residents very early on in a process, and we will not get the funding if we do not do that and show robust evidence. So they do see the value in it, but they might not have that direct relationship. And then Fabi mentioned about the regulator of social housing, and things are moving in more of a direction. Right now they're very focused on what they call the economic standards. They're focused on governance and financial viability. We also have consumer standards, such as tenant empowerment, for example, and due to a tragedy that happened about 5 years ago called Grenfell that you may be familiar with, and quite a large number of residents unfortunately perished. There's been a real sea change, and the repercussions of that, from the government down, mean that there's more of a focus in how we're regulating. They are asking questions: how are we engaging with residents, and is it meaningful? So that will start to translate into how we're heavily regulated as well in the future. So it varies depending on the organisation, I suppose.
Great. And so we talked about, sort of education and training for youth and for residents. Do you need to train the politicians as well?
Yes.
Definitely.
Train them first.
Yeah. And is there a kind of experience where there was a sort of either government official or elected official, agency head that sort of was brought along and changed their perspective given the resident-led management structures?
Yeah, I would say it's a process of, it's sort of partly coercion, partly engagement, partly, a whole range of things. But it does. Just an example, we had the mayor of our borough basically opposed to one of our schemes, but based on the strength of incident reaction, changed his mind, came round, did the right thing, but needed a fair amount of answers to do it.
Great. So maybe we'll move to property management and governance. How much time do we have? Because I also want to make sure that we have time for audience questions. Like 5-6 more minutes or so? Okay, great. Oh, thank you. I appreciate it. Maybe this is for Quentin and Tanya specifically, although the panel generally, have there ever been difficulties with the sort of the process of residents-led regeneration, or challenges? Like what are, and how might you overcome some of those challenges?
Okay, yeah, I mean, in terms of governance and residents getting involved in our governance structure, and as Tanya explained earlier, when Tanya got involved, she got involved in a committee, a services committee, and then through experience, with the capacity, became chair of that group after 2 years, and then joined the board. But for a lot of residents, entering the governance structure, they will often start with an issue that's around something that's directly affecting their lives, something that's affecting maybe some neighbours, and then it's about making that transition when you're a board member of having to represent the interests of the organisation. So bringing along your experience as a resident, but having to think about the corporate needs of the organisation. So I can think of it, there's lots of examples of wearing those different hats. But one that sort of happened a couple of years ago was a board member who lived with his family, his adult children were still at home, and they had 3 cars in the family, within the family. And Poplar HARCA were going to put up parking charges quite significantly, and it was going to cost him, and it was going to cost his son a lot more money. But he understood that Poplar HARCA needs to do that. It's strategically important. So he voted he agreed with that policy, even though it was going to disbenefit him individually. So that's the type of tension and kind of role conflict you can get. So it's about kind of understanding that, kind of understanding the balance of being a resident and having corporate responsibility.
Mm-hmm.
I think just to add to that, it's about recognising that what you are doing as part of that governance structure will benefit the whole community. It's not you as an individual, fighting for your individual needs. It's you are there because you're fighting for a greater good and a greater cause, I think. And I think sometimes residents come into the process thinking that it's going to be the latter, and it will be about what can I get and how can I get it and how quickly can I get it. And actually, that's not what the governance is about. The governance is about holding Poplar HARCA to account on what they say they're going to do and making sure that they follow through and they deliver. That's what it's about. And I think so. It takes very careful kind of management and training, I think, and development to help residents kind of adjust that kind of role play, if you like. But I think otherwise we've got a very skillfully kind of selected group of individuals who want to be there for the right reasons and are absolutely functioning in that kind of way. And the training and development that we get, some mentoring and all sorts of other things, really prepare you for your role within the governance structure and I think within the wider community as well.
Yeah. So maybe following up on that,
and back on that, I mean, there's kind of another point I think kind of gets asked, and it's about why is it necessary to involve residents, and why is that kind of beneficial? And I kind of just wanted to emphasise that residents are experts. They're experts in their own community, but they're also got other skills and other expertise. You have to do the work in digging around to find those people, but they're all there and they're all there within your communities. Residents know what's going to work and what isn't going to work. So if you're a service provider, you can save yourselves a lot of money. And we had fantastic. So we've got lots of examples. I want to use an example from yesterday. So we were walking around a step low, and we were waiting for a lift, and Mr. Bowman, who I think most of you know, community leader, told us about the lift, and the panels were being replaced to the lifts, and historically the middle panel where the button is that press the lift had been removed. So it was vandalised or whatever, but it was being removed. And all the panels were being replaced on the lift, but they weren't replacing the middle panel. And all the wires were exposed, and it's just a nightmare. So Mr. Bowman saw this spec and he said, well, hang on a minute, you haven't replaced that middle panel, And they're like, what do you mean? And so he took a photo of it. Really simple, just took a photo of it, took it to whatever your director was dealing with it, and they went, oh, behind me. Yeah, no, we've got to do that, haven't we? So really simple example. If they hadn't done it, it would have just, people would be pulling the wires out, causing the lifts to break down, all of that, and they would have had to do it at some point, so it would have been an additional cost. Really simple example of how the role of residents saves service providers money. From here, not from what you make example. No criticism of the service provider, we make this mistakes as well.
Great. So maybe for Hilal and Emmanuel, what are the ways that you set up residents for success in this resident-led management structure, right? Because it's not intuitive, right? Like board structures, corporate structures.
It's not, but the belief's there in most all people, and for me, it's helping them find it internally to be able to then. I think everyone's got that You know, one way or another, we've got it. And it's just someone else just pulling you, pushing you, just bring it out, and then help. It's Mike's a bit funny. Where's my voice? And it's just, I think a lot of it is about nurturing and bringing people along on that journey, really. And it's that ownership. So whether you're a young person, an elder, male, female, it doesn't really matter. It's the journey that you're going on and all those little relationships.
I think there's a combination. I think in the structure, we do have a youth empowerment board, and there are other groups as well, steering groups, and there's independent advisory groups for certain services as well. But I think one thing that I also do is there are also other young people in the community that can't really express themselves in those structures as well. So it's all about, I think it's on like doing some detached elements and going into places where are deemed as problems or antisocial behavior and crime, actually speaking to these people, finding out why, and building relationships with them and trying to work out what the real needs are and feeding those needs back into decision-making tables and pretty much bringing those views of the disenfranchised back onto the views, bringing their views into tables as well. So whatever decision is made is also taking their views into consideration.
I think the other thing, just to add to that, is who says a consultation is the best way to get the information? Who said it's got to be in a boardroom? Why can't it be in a badminton court? Why can't it be in the music recording studio? Why can't it be on a dance floor?
At the bus stop.
At the bus stop, anywhere.
Chip shop.
Yeah, it's where conversations happen. That's the biggest thing. It's where conversations happen, where people feel comfortable, where people feel safe.
Yeah. So I see my 2-minute or maybe 1.5 minute signal
0 minutes.
or 0 minutes. And I appreciate that because the next part is actually getting to questions. So I'm okay to take a step back and then hear everybody else's comments. And so I want to thank our panel, and I think we'll have time afterwards for people to talk as well, right? Great, thank you so much.